Welcome to the Live Up podcast, where we revisit the movies from our youth to see if they live up. I'm Jess Latterman.
And I'm Amanda Treat. Today we're reviewing Troop Beverly Hills. Get out your sashes. We are all earning our mediocre movie badges today.
or maybe it's not mediocre. We'll see. For those new to the podcast, so after a quick overview of the movie, today it's Troop Beverly Hills. We're going to discuss and then each score on a scale of 1 to 10 whether the movie lives up to us now as adults, whether it could live up to kids now, or at least the movie's intended audience. Then both of us will give the movie a final yay or nay, whether it lives up or not. We've rewatched the movie in question before recording, but haven't shared our full thoughts with each other yet.
I've got to stop you and ask, because you picked this movie, and I'm dying. Jess, why did you choose this movie?
I chose this movie because I felt like it was one where it was on repeat on TBS over and over. And I watched it all the time, and I remember loving it, but I didn't remember that much about it. So it fell in this category where I had these like warm and fuzzy nostalgia feelings, but without any level of specificity at all. So I thought that would be a good one to revisit. And it seems like it's possible you're not happy about it.
Maybe. We'll get into that. It's got a cult following, though, so I think a lot of people were watching it on replay on weekends or whenever they were putting this in a loop on TBS. So I think the crowd consensus is there is a fan following for this movie.
There is. And maybe that fan does not include Amanda Treat. It's possible.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
For anyone who did not watch TBS relentlessly as a child, do you want to give a quick reminder of what this movie is about?
Yes. So quick plot synopsis. So Shelley Long, as you might know her from Cheers, she plays Phyllis Neffler, and she is a rich bitch you learn to love. So she leads a Girl Scout troop from Beverly Hills. They do their own thing in their own way, as you would imagine that would happen in 1980s Troop Beverly Hills. And they somehow become the underdog in this like low stakes pissing match with the Girl Scout leadership. And to me, there are so many things to appreciate about this movie, and we maybe not to Amanda. But before we get to that, so that was just the basic brief overview. You know, it's a bunch of 13-year-old girls and Shelley Long making a lot of jokes. There's a lot of cameos in here. Maybe you could take us back to 1989. Tell us about this movie in terms of how it was released, how it was received.
All right.
People other than Amanda Treat, that
other
is.
than me, yeah. My personal review aside, I had to dig back both into memories and Wikipedia because all I could remember was, so Shelley Long is the main actress in this movie, and she had just left Cheers, which was very, I think, almost at its peak popularity at that point on television. And that show's set in Boston, and growing up in Boston, I recall pissed at her. Like, they thought it was bad taste for her to leave the show and jump to film. And especially this film, this was not the same target audience as Cheers at all. So you got a lot of like, not so smart there, Shelley. Like, you're wicked stupid. You shouldn't have left Cheers. I didn't see it in the theater, but like, I think it was kind of like an underperformer. It didn't do great at the box office, if I recall.
Yeah, it was just like $8.5 million at the box office.
They pulled out the stops for this movie. I mean, this is her jump to film. So you got Shelley Long as like their big headliner, but I mean, the opening credits and the tail credits are like Beach Boys songs that I think were written for this movie. You had the director of Revenge of the Nerds, which had come out a few years earlier and was like huge. So I think, and then, yeah, just all these Hollywood cameos and all these Beverly Hills locations shooting. I think they probably had really high expectations for this movie, and people just weren't that into it. So that's I'm probably, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but my memory is that people were like a little miffed at Shelley Long for leaving Cheers, and that they didn't think this movie was worth leaving Cheers for.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because I think we we were about 9, 10 years old when this movie came out. So I have no memory of seeing it. I mean, I didn't see it in the theater.
Yeah.
And I think I only watched it later as like a tween. So, sort of like maybe when I was like 11, 12. So a few years had passed and it was on, the rights must have been cheap because it was on TV all the time. So I feel like all that stuff just kind of went over, in terms of expectation, went over my head. I guess I actually associate Shelley Long more with this movie than I do with Cheers in a way.
Interesting.
So I wonder if there's like, okay, I'm not from Boston, but I wonder if you were just even a few years older than us too, you would probably associate her with Cheers, not this movie. But
Yeah, because I was probably not old enough to be watching and appreciating Cheers. It's constantly on reruns too, so
yeah.
I definitely saw her on it.
Also, rest in peace, Christy Alley.
Oh yeah,
That's for another. We're
another
gonna have
time.
to
But
do Look Who's Talking or something.
that's a very a fresh wound for us.
Yeah, but this movie was also, I was looking, it was like pretty universally panned by critics. I
Oh
mean,
my God, have you seen the Rotten Tomato score for this?
it's about 14%, I believe. And
That's exactly what it is.
it's pretty bad. And yeah, it's definitely not something that other movies should aspire to achieve in terms of critical acclaim. But I guess sometimes that doesn't matter. A cult hit is a cult hit.
One of the good things that came out of that, though, is I love it when Robert Ebert used to hate a movie because the articles he'd write about it his reviews when he hated something were just scathing and hilarious. And so this got one of the, it's not quite as good as, what is that, Deuce Bigelow review he wrote? He just ripped that apart. But his review of this movie is pretty funny to read. So recommend it. It's still out there on the internet. If anyone can be bothered to look that up.
Yeah, and not to give too much away of how I feel about this movie, but when I was researching the podcast, I was like 14%, but how is that possible? I was like, I almost didn't believe it. Like, how could it be that low? How could people not like this movie? Which I have a feeling you and I will spar over this later.
Maybe. We both mentioned we weren't old enough to, or our parents couldn't be bothered to take us to go see this in the theater. I feel like I don't have a distinct memory of seeing this movie for the first time or on repeat on cable. But I feel like this had to be like a sleepover party movie.
Sleepover party.
Somebody's parents put this on in the VCR and walked out of the room and left us there watching it in the dark with our sleeping bags.
Which, like, we'll get to whether this is appropriate for kids because I'm not sure. But
yeah. So I think that had to be the context that I saw it for the first, possibly only time. And the one thing I could remember from it was that tail end scene where they send, or the main villain in this is the other scout leader, and she's just making that announcement over the PA system at Kmart. Like, that was the one thing that stuck with me from this movie as a kid. Whatever that's worth, I somehow erased all the other things that they did in this movie and just remembered the line about the blue light special
at Kmart
with the cookies.
With the cookies, yes. I don't remember that as a kid, and my viewing of it, like I said, I think I was a little bit older. Probably, I also think it was a slumber party type movie. Definitely didn't see it in the theater, but I don't think I've actually watched that many times the whole movie through because I think of commercials or this is gonna guys, we're gonna sound like a bunch of old cranks here, but back when you couldn't start from the beginning and you just had to watch live television. So I think it was one of those movies where I started a lot in the middle or or maybe towards the end, and I don't think I saw it the whole way through. I certainly didn't see it the whole way through with like curse words and nothing edited out. So that was
okay. Let's dive in. There's a lot of just characters calling each other shitheads and just yelling the word shit like over and over again, which I did not remember from this movie, and it kind of caught me off guard because it's Shelley Long swearing, and she's got that like little. I mean, her image at the time was the princess, the uptight wasp. I don't even know. I mean, it was all her Cheers reputation, but just hearing her swear was like, oh, Shelley.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear all the cursing too. Just not that I'm a clutch my pearls person, but I was surprised considering this movie was targeted towards tweens, I guess. There was like a lot of booze and smoking and cursing. And one other memory from when I was a kid, I definitely thought that this is really generally what Beverly Hills was like for
Oh,
everyone. And I think even the first time that I had been to California, I was, probably well into a teenagehood by then. It's like I half expected like the Troop Beverly Hills to be like wandering down Rodeo Drive, assessing
selling
jewelry. I
cookies.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah. Like this
nice.
this to me was like, oh, this is just what California and Beverly Hills is like. This is like a documentary. This is what it's like, which obviously is,
I
you know.
mean, I'm gonna get into this later, but like, there's a level of like vapidness in this movie that makes me think of the Kardashians, and I, I don't watch their show, but in my head, their show, if they ever had an episode where one of them volunteered for the Girl Scouts of America, it would be this movie.
Pretty much, but it would probably not be as charming.
Probably not. No, you're right.
Probably not.
Oh, wait. So were you a Girl Scout? I don't know this about you.
No, I was not. I don't think
Oh,
Girl Scouts were as much a thing where I grew up. I literally grew up thinking that Girl Scouts was only something in movies. I didn't think that people actually did it.
oh,
But
interesting.
so were you a Girl Scout?
I was for I think 2 years. I was a brownie, but I do want to call out that my mom was our troop leader. So that's
Was she like a Phyllis Neffler?
no, not
No?
even close. I actually called her the other day because I said we're going to be reviewing this movie, and I just want to ask because this movie starts with a very in-depth review of Phyllis's application to be the troop leader. And I
Yeah.
said to my mom, was there an application to be a Girl Scout leader? And she was like, God, no, they just wanted anyone with a pulse. There was no background check, no Corey run, nothing. Like,
No
just
one's
take
doing a
anyone
big
off.
stamp of approval.
Yeah, just anyone off the street. Happy to have you. That's the 80s for you right there. Um,
Welcome all pedophiles. Yes.
oh, yeah. She did actually make that comment like, it didn't work out so well for the Boy Scouts. It's like, oh, God.
Oh
Yep.
God.
Yep. Yeah.
So was your experience as a Girl Scout, I would imagine, quite different than what's depicted in this movie?
Yes, but I think it also was not what you would stereotype as the Girl Scout experience. And think of the Girl Scouts, and aside from the cookies, you think of the uniforms, you think they're going on camping trips and learning to tie knots and light fires uh, safely. They're the Girl Scouts. And we were doing more like suburban Girl Scouts. So, like, we didn't go anywhere. There was no camping. There were no overnight trips. I don't even think there were field trips. We met in the church basement in our little village, and we made brownies out of brownie mix. And we took like pre-grown impatiens that we got from Lowe's and stuck them in flower pots. Like it was a very middle class, living in the suburbs kind of life
So,
skills
so
we were
you
being
didn't get
taught.
any you didn't go for like your money laundering patch or your jewelry assessment
No,
patch a
there was
la Troop Beverly Hills. No.
yeah, no, they stuck to the cooking and sewing. Although I will call out my mom, she's very proud of this. You used to get the patches and then your mom would like sew them to the sash for you. And my mom told all the other mothers, like, no, just staple it. Like, who cares?
She stapled the
Just to
patches.
staple the
There's
patches.
no way that that's how you're supposed to do it.
No, you're supposed to, I think they're iron on, but
Oh,
that you could
Mrs.
also
Treat.
sew them. But she was just like, no, stapler, you're done in 5 seconds.
Oh my
Great.
God.
Yeah. So she told all the other moms. So we were like the troop with like the stapled on patches.
That's amazing.
She's
You
very
say
proud of that.
somehow I feel like you like couldn't go through a metal detector at the airport.
Yeah. Oh. No, she was like troop leader hack right there. Just
Yeah.
get out a stapler.
So that's her. And she has her furs and her champagne and all that. But I feel like she just wants to be appreciated and be a good mom.
I think that's true. She's definitely a very irritating character in the beginning. She is the stereotype. She's kind of useless. She does a lot of shopping. And I think the moments they're showing where they're trying to make her more rounded is like, oh, look how nice she is to her gardener. Yeah, I don't know. Like
She's sort of like a
or like
walking
look how
meme.
yeah, she really is.
She's
She
a
really
walking,
is.
and I think it's like it was totally punctuated by, that her application to be a Girl Scout leader, it's like you hear her voice saying, I am frugal, but then like it cuts to her negotiating the price of a $5,000 gown.
Down by like what, $100? It wasn't
Yeah,
a lot.
something dumb like that. So, I mean,
Because
so
it's
she's like,
missing
I love
the
animals. And she's just like, I don't know, she holding like a turtle or something. Like, it
no,
doesn't
she
even
had
make
that
sense.
sequin frog. She has
Oh, the
like
sequin
or a
frog. Like,
crystal frog. I don't know what that was.
yeah.
I've
So,
never owned one of those.
yeah, there's certainly the setup is sort of definitely in the category of ridiculous. And, she is to me the rich bitch you learn to love. I mean, she,
So right off the bat, I was immediately comparing this to Legally Blonde. Because the beginning
mm,
of that
good
movie,
comparison.
very similar, but I really like that character better. Even
Yeah,
though you're watching her do the same things, like they're shopping, they're negotiating with
that's
the
true.
sales team, they're sending an application off. In my head, it was not done as well as Legally Blonde, and the other thing too, not this is not a character trait so much as just the way the story was written. They dive in at a moment where a lot of the action has already happened. Like whatever has gone on with their marriage, this Phyllis and her husband Frank, they're already separated. He's already living in the pool house. You didn't see any of that buildup. And then her applying for the Girl Scouts and whatever that decision was, you don't see any of that either. Like the application's already in. So there was a part of me that was like, wait, we need the catalyst here. Like, what made her apply to be a Girl Scout, and what made her hate her husband so much that he's living in the pool house right now?
Right.
Which then goes back to Legally Blonde, because they do show that. They show the breakup at the dinner scene and the moping that goes on, and I'm gonna go to Harvard kind of attitude coming out of Reese Witherspoon's character. So
Yeah.
it's
That's a great comparison because I think immediately you want to root for Reese Witherspoon's character. I know we're not reviewing Legally Blonde, but
yeah, we might
I
eventually.
this is I think where we're going to differ slightly. And I didn't watch this movie with my kids actually, which I regret. But just my wife and I watched it together. There's some sympathetic things there that I never picked up as a kid. When
Mm-hmm.
she, even when she and her husband, Craig T. Nelson, who known as like Coach or whatever
Yeah,
in
he was
that '90s
filming Coach
show,
at the time.
he's sort of dismissive of her, but he's not a total jerk. And, they have this conversation about divorce and they're quipping funny things back and forth. Like, all you do is shop. And this, I found out that, I married you and you were exciting, but now you just shop and, you suck.
Mm-hmm.
I found that her conversation about divorce with him, like there's moments of where you do feel some sympathy that I never picked up on as a kid, where she talks about, you don't appreciate what I do, you don't appreciate
Mm-hmm.
what I contribute, and there's a little bit of this like, I just want to be my own person and I don't think you like the person I want to be. And I just sort of, it hit me in a different way watching as an adult, even though it was like totally ridiculous. All right, we could talk about Coach, otherwise known as, I don't even remember his
He's
name.
Mr. Incredible.
Oh, that's right, he's Mr. Incredible too.
His name is Frank in this movie. And I just want to say his pants are enormous. In every scene, he is wearing a circus tent for pants.
It's like a pleated circus tent for his pants.
He makes an entrance as she's like walking in with her shopping bags, and it's just like a giant pair of pants filling a door frame behind her. And I just cannot get over his fashion in this movie. It's so awful, but like uniquely 80s.
Do you think they did that on purpose because her fashion at the time, like she's wearing like these couture things?
I think that was the at the time. I think that was like what rich guys who want to be a little bit younger than they actually are were
They wear
wearing.
circus tents.
Yeah, no, oh God, what were those giant pants called? Like, I want to say they're called like, I'm gonna have to Google it, like Zumbas, something with a Z.
It sounds unflattering, whatever it is. I thought that he wasn't as the stereotypical bad guy, right? He wasn't
No, he's
that
not.
much of a jerk. And he wasn't that, even though he's like telling Phyllis, his wife, that she doesn't, all she does is shop and she doesn't do anything. He's not really being that mean. And in some ways it's a little hard to hate him as a character, even though I think a lot of these movies at the time, you would want to think that the guy's just this like two-dimensional jerk. And I don't
Yeah.
think he was that. He has like a nice moment with his daughter in his apartment, which by the
Yeah,
way, like,
that was sweet.
yeah, rich divorced guy living on the beach, living it up. It was sweet. He's just trying to connect with his daughter and wants to be a part of her life. And the daughter calls him out a little bit on it to say, you don't really need, basically in her own 13-year-old turning 30 way, you don't need to do all this. But there is like this sympathetic, like he just wants to shower love and attention on his daughter, and there's like I can't hate him. I can't hate him.
Yeah, no.
I didn't need him to be shirtless sometimes because it's like a lot of hair, and this
I don't know.
lesbian is
I was
like,
still just
why
like overwhelmed by the pants.
shirtless with tent
Giant,
pants?
giant pants. Zubas. That was what I was trying to reference
Zubas.
earlier.
Okay, that just sounds terrible, and it
They were
could
like
be.
the iteration before the Hammer pants came in with MC Hammer there.
That's right. It would be pre MC Hammer.
It was
Yeah.
a time of enormous, enormous pants.
I mean, there's like funny moments, like his wife, like, Phyllis is like spying. He's staying in the guest house, if folks don't remember, which is like ridiculous. Again, this is my view of like all people in California have guest houses. It's like a little funny. He has this stereotypical like prostitute looking young girlfriend who's
Who's
kind
his
of a
real
bee,
estate agent, apparently.
apparently.
Actually, that scene, so yeah, they're having a lot of tension in their marriage. They say they're going to get divorced. He's living in their pool house, guest house, whatever that is. There is the scene where Shelley Long's character, Phyllis, spots the real estate agent slash girlfriend slash whatever pretty woman she is walking into the house. And I took a note because she wakes up her daughter and goes, honey,
Yeah,
is there a woman visiting your father? Like, there's this whole element of the daughter who they're fighting over is really the only adult in the room in a lot of
totally.
situations. And I just
Yeah.
I found that so appropriate. You'd wake your child up to be like, honey, is your dad cheating on me?
And she's like, I'm tired. Can we spy on dad in the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, the daughter was the only adult in the room. And I think there was a lot of that with even some of the other 13-year-olds.
They're way too mature compared to their parents.
Way too mature. And, if at least for the other troop kids, the other adults are a little bit more faceless in a way. But yeah, the 13, and I also found it sort of this getting back to Phyllis's character where she needs this like constant affirmation from a bunch of 13-year-old girls. And
Mhm.
that's just sort of like, okay, lady, have another
Yeah.
martini.
The comments about the kids in therapy are so disparaging.
They are disparaging. I know. I even looked up divorce rates in the 1980s because I was thinking like this was such a theme throughout the movie and part of the jokes with the kids. It's like it seems like everyone in this movie in 1989 is very aware that divorce is like some sort of epidemic. And I did read that in the US, divorces did spike in the 80s and in 1981 and then slowly started to, they've been down ever since. But I think it was a setting of the time, and perhaps we were a little too young to really pick up on that. But
Yeah.
there's even other moments where the whole scene where they're at the gala where Phyllis falls into the pool. They're doing a gala, by the way, people, a gala to raise money for cookies, which is like ridiculous. And the husband tells her he's wants a divorce, and Phyllis is expecting him to just like shower her with love again, and like fast forward to the slapstick stupidity of her basically walking into the pool in a full gown. When the husband turns to everyone was like, we're getting divorced. And everyone's like,
The
yeah,
whole
I
crowd.
get
The
it.
whole crowd. Oh, okay.
And I feel like that's something that would never fly today as a joke because it's just a little bit different now. Like divorce rates aren't spiking.
Yeah. We're jumping ahead a little bit. Like, there's a few other things that I don't think would fly today. I mean,
Yeah, what wouldn't fly today,
the
Judy?
cigarette smoking troop leader who's she's smoking with one of those oh, what are they called, those fancy cigarette holders that they have in like the game of Clue.
Yes, exactly. The
So
Beverly Hills version of
she's
cigarette holders.
smoking so frequently that they even animated her smoking into the animated intro.
That's
She's
right.
leading the cartoon Girl Scouts into the woods. She's still got her cigarette holder and her cigarette. So
Yeah.
way too much of that with just at one point one of the girls is like, smoking's bad for you, but that's the only comment that's made about her incessantly smoking at Girl Scout meetings.
Although one of the girls actually said, she's like, it's bad for you and it's a way for your dealing with your emotions, which was just another
Hmm.
way for a 13-year-old to basically be the adult in the room.
Very adult children in this troop. Um,
Yeah.
so there's that. There's the drinking. I think this actually works, but it's not in the same tone as the rest of the movie because they're trying to be warm and fuzzy with the growth that's going on with Phyllis. And they have one girl in the troop who is the daughter of a dictator. And every time those parents appear and they're like, Mr. Dictator, Mrs. Dictator, and asking them about like the shoe collection, like it's kind of a reference to the Marcos family in the 1980s and Imelda Marcos and all her shoes. I don't think you can make light about. I think she gets a patch for like putting down a rebellion or
She
something.
does. She
Yeah,
gets a patch for money laundering and how to crush a rebellion.
yeah. But like, while I thought that was actually pretty funny, it's not the tone of this movie at all. So
True.
that whole bit belongs in another movie, possibly
Yeah,
a
I
funnier,
did
more
still think it
scathing
was
movie.
funny. I felt almost wrong still thinking it was funny, but it still sort of worked for me in a way. I thought it was a little
Yeah,
funny. Maybe because it's like, it's a product of its time. But
yeah.
let's just talk a little bit about the other girls in the troop. Like I sort of want to start with the drop off scene.
That
And so
scene is amazing, and I
amazing.
wish they could like replicate that because you got so much information about each of these girls by the way they're being dropped off for their first meeting, but you don't see any of it again. Like they all kind of just meld into one troop, but the drop off scene is hilarious with all the different personalities and families and crazies who are coming to the Girl Scout
Yeah,
meeting.
I thought this was the best scene in the movie. Like to me, this scene was just, it is never old to make fun of rich people. That's like what that scene was, and it still was funny. And even though it was dated in a way where, the high-powered dad has this like car phone, which back in 1989, you young listeners, like cell phones were not a thing. And so car phones looked like hilariously like spoofs of what a car phone would look like.
Oh, you had to
There's like
have like a
cords.
whole tower coming out of your car to like
Yeah, pretty much.
service on that.
Yeah, there's a ton of that. There's some of that is dated, but then you get all of the different neuroses that come with it, whether it's the ignored kid, the kid who's not rich anymore, the director that's sort of everything is for show. I thought the drop-off scene was like truly amazing.
Yeah. No, it's a funny intro to all of the girls in the troop.
And my favorite one was the one who has her mom like writes like soft porn. And basically in the car in the drop off, the mom is like recording some of her notes for writing. And then the daughter like has an edit for this soft porn. And I'm like that just like, first of all, totally would 100% never be in a movie today. I think if I were watching it with my kids, it would go way over their heads. My kids are 10 and 5, but I thought it was funny. But at the same time, I'm like, show me the rich British lady who dresses to the nines to drop off her kid who actually writes soft porn for a living.
Hmm.
But it still was funny. I laughed out loud. I thought it was funny.
So I want to call out some of the kids in this movie are like, as I watched it, I was like, she's so familiar. Who is that? And I had to look them up. The annoying kid from Small Wonder. Did you ever watch that show?
No, I didn't.
Where there's like a robot living in the
Oh,
house. They
yes.
have like
That
an
girl, the red
annoying neighbor.
hair.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so she's in there. The actress who played Margot from Punky Brewster, who's like the rich snobby girl, she's one
Yep.
of the Girl Scouts.
Yep.
And then barely noticeable at all, but in the other troop, their like rival troop, the Red Feathers, Tori Spelling is always like running around second in command in that. And I did not recognize her at all. But so many of these people, as like the childhood versions of themselves, it's like, wait, who is that? Why do I know who that is?
That is the scene that I remembered the most
Yeah.
from and that I enjoyed the most as a kid. And I would venture to say I didn't watch this with my kids, but I think they would still like that scene.
Yeah.
There's something just so, it's such a caricature of itself that in its simplicity, I think it would still resonate for kids.
Yeah.
You
Do
know,
you
I
want
think,
to take a quick second to talk about the housekeeper? We haven't talked about her
oh, we
yet.
haven't. Thank you for reminding me, Amanda.
Her
I am
name
off my game.
Her name is Rosa, and the second she steps on screen, you're in your head going, "Wait, I know her. Why do I know her?" But she's been the housekeeper somewhere else.
Right. And, so Elena said that to me, and I was like, Elena, come on.
Don't be stereotypical
Don't do
here.
that.
No, this actress is a very famous housekeeper from another,
Right.
much more popular television show.
Right. So yes, after and I wonder if folks, if listeners, if you rewatch this, we're just going to tell you the answer, but I wonder if you'll have this reaction too. So she was instantly recognizable. And so she was the maid from Will and Grace
She
and
plays Rosario, who's
Rosario. Yeah, and it's sort of I hesitate. I'm not going to use the word funny. We'll just call it kind of interesting that like she is in full maid costume, being the maid. And by the way, as the maid, she goes to the jamboree thing at the end. She has the great patches quote, but she is generally known for playing Rosario on
Rosario
Will
and
and
Will and
Grace.
Grace. You know
Yeah,
what though? I did appreciate that, like, she could have been a side character who just pops up in their house like the gardener was. The fact that they kind of incorporate her into the family a little bit more, like one of the girls comes over when her parents have forgotten her birthday, and this character Rose is like, "Give me a minute," and like slips off to the side and comes
that's
back
right.
with like, I think it was a little cake or something for her. And then at the jamboree, she's in her own clothes. Like she's not being forced to wear that maid uniform, which you only ever saw her in Will and Grace wearing that outfit.
Right.
Um, and she was
Right.
she was such a dynamite character on Will and Grace. But I feel like they gave her a little bit more to do here than they did anyone else who's on a different class level.
That's right.
Not They don't give her enough to do because she's such a great actress. But yeah, I did feel like they rounded out. That could have been just a like, haha, funny. They have a maid character, but they gave her more to do than that, and
Yeah, they did. And
they let her problem solve a few things, which
they did. She definitely jumped off the screen, not just because she was familiar and we were like, who is she? She
why
kind of
do I
jumped off
know
the
her?
screen. Yeah, she jumped off and we were like, who is she? I want to know. Wait, and then when Elena was like, I think she played a maid in something else. I'm like, no, she didn't. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, she at the tail end of this movie, when they are finishing the jamboree, she shows up with Frank, the husband. So like the two of them traveled together as like friends, seemingly, to go cheer on the Wilderness Girls troop. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of a fuller character than I was expecting them to give
Yeah.
her. Do you
Yeah.
want to
Poor
call out
things.
though? Because I think you and I talked about this or made note of this. The one black family who's dropping off their daughter gets pulled over by the police, and the
Yeah.
joke is that the daughter sasses her way out of them getting in any trouble. But like, I feel like that wouldn't fly in a movie today. Although I guess you could go back and
I
look at
think the
that movie
sassy dog,
Crash.
the sassy part, probably not, because I think that was sort of like, we're gonna make this the token character. But I thought I saw it in like a totally different way. I was wondering, I was like, is this movie ahead of its time? Are they commenting on
No,
are
that's
they
the
commenting
thing.
on driving while, getting pulled over by the police? I don't know.
I felt like they were just making fun of it. Like, I don't know.
That's
The
true.
tone of this movie is a little unbalanced, so it's hard to know like what like I don't think they're making any critical commentary honestly in
I
this
don't think so
movie.
either, but it was almost, maybe it's like incidental watching it as an adult, thinking
Maybe.
like, oh wow, this was
Oh.
enough of a thing that in 1989 they were making fun of it, which we could, talk about whether that's appropriate or not, but that was viewing it. I would imagine viewing it as an adult in 1989, you would probably recognize that as something that could possibly happen.
Yeah. Ended up being a director after this. And she came out of Second City, as did Shelley Long. Like
Oh,
both of them
really?
were like comedic actresses. But the more I read about what she did outside of this movie, all I could think was she should have directed this. Like,
You think it would have been better to your
well,
standards?
so she and Shelley Long, she went on and directed the Brady Bunch movie. Do you remember
Oh,
that?
really?
And Shelley Long was in that as Carol Brady, I think. But that was actually kind of funny, and like the satire level was appropriate. And then she did Private Parts, which was that Howard Stern biopic, which also was like pretty
Oh,
like
right. You learned it
a
here,
good
guys.
level of like she hit the level of humor appropriately and like wasn't all over the place. Like I genuinely think she would have done a better job directing this movie than the
Yeah, clearly. Well, I think she was definitely comic book villain in a
yeah,
way.
she's given a really poor character here. Like every single line out of her mouth might as well be followed with "Mwahahaha." Like she's
Pretty
just
much.
so like cartoonishly evil.
I know she's two-dimensional, but I also think, and again, I didn't watch it with my kids, but in some ways, I do think that still could work. A two-dimensional villain still works, I think, for let's say the younger set. And I guess
Yeah.
my memory of it is so fond that I like forgave way too much of it. But it was dumb. I know it was a dumb treat. I know. I know.
I mean, she's the only part I remembered as a kid was
Really.
her talking about or doing the blue light special for the cookies at the end of this movie.
Yeah. And that was actually kind of funny. So basically, just to like one plot piece. So she has this assistant, Miss Herman, who Velda is who we're talking about now, played by Betty Thomas. So she enlists her assistant to infiltrate the Troop Beverly Hills so Miss Herman could like spy and like report back on all these terrible things they're doing. And obviously Miss Herman eventually comes to the side of Troop Beverly Hills and she goes against Velda and all that stuff. But it was definitely stereotypical in every way. But the Kmart thing is that the whole thing is like that Miss Herman has to do this for Velda because Velda keeps threatening her, like, when I found you, you were just a lowly Kmart worker, whatever, which like,
Yeah,
is
could
mean
we
in its own right.
no, but
And
could we talk about this for a second? Because
yeah,
like I feel like this movie is trying to say something about class. Like you've got your rich people running this Troop Beverly Hills. You've got I don't know, they're middle class. It's Culver City. That's not poor to my
right.
knowledge. And then you've got her constantly threatening her troop assistant with the I'm gonna ship you back to Kmart. Like, why are we dumping on Kmart employees throughout this movie? It's not just like a one-off. Like this is a repeated threat. This is the stakes for this character, Annie Herman. Like, you better succeed or you're gonna have to work at Kmart. Gosh.
Yeah.
Like it's a job. Like what are we like dumping on Kmart for? I don't know. I felt like that was very inconsistent with like we're making fun of Shelley Long for being such a frivolous shopper, but we're also making fun of Kmart. Like it just
That's true. I didn't think of it that way. It's funny because even rewatching it, I didn't really like think that much of it. And certainly as a kid, I didn't really think about it, but I did find the part at the end. And for folks, spoiler alert, at the end, basically when Velda is ousted, she's totally ousted because she loses the jamboree. She's exposed for spying and being a general asshole. She ends up working at Kmart, and that's basically the closing scene. And I again, I kind of laughed out loud at that.
oh, it's funny and it's like a great full circle because she's been insulting Annie the whole time with you're gonna have to
Yeah.
work at Kmart and now she's working at Kmart. But like it just is such a weird punishment for the villain in this movie. Like you're gonna have to work retail. Oh, like,
Oh, I know. I know there's a little bit of that. Yeah, I guess there is. And in a weird way, just the general commentary for this for me is that, somehow these privileged kids end up being the underdog that you want to root for in the movie. And for me, clearly, I don't think it worked for you, but for me, it kind of still worked, and in a way where, yeah, like they go to the troop like after they do dumb things like get patches in, basically shopping. Shelley Long decides to make up her own patches, which are like jewelry appraisal and money laundering and things like
yeah,
that. They go to some the Girl Scouts event and they basically get laughed at, and the Red Feathers, led by Velda, are making fun of the Troop Beverly Hills. Like they're not real, wilder women, and they can't sell Girl Scout cookies. And then by the time you get to them selling Girl Scout cookies, it's like, yeah, I want to win. Like they're the underdogs, which is like funny in a way, because like they're not.
No. Oh God, they've had all the privilege. They used a word on themselves at one point. What was it? Overindulged. One of the girls
Yeah,
in
you
the troop
think.
said, "Hey, like you've taken on this troop of overindulged girls."
Yes, that is what they say.
I'll surprise you slightly here by saying the things that Phyllis, Shelley Long's character, is teaching her troop to do. I actually took a step back and was like, all right, these are the skills that they actually will need to survive in the upper class. Like they need to know where to get a facial and they need to know how to check into the Beverly Hills Hotel. And like these are the things that are going to occur in their lives. They are not going to need to know how to start a fire. They're not going to need to know how to like find water in the woods. It got me thinking of, so I saw this online a few years ago and I found it because it's still out there. Somebody made a checklist of, it's called Knowledge of the Hidden Rules of Social Classes, a questionnaire. And it's like a checklist. Yeah, they don't need to know how to kayak at all.
Yeah, and that's sort of a quintessential like theme throughout the whole movie. I mean, they're supposed to go on this overnight, and there's the Shelley Long character Phyllis. She's in a white mink coat, and like it starts raining, and she falls in the mud, and then they end up at a hotel. And it's like it's all the stereotypes. I mean, in a weird way, that still freaking worked for me because I thought it was still funny, and I think it would still be funny to like 10 to 12-year-olds. Watching somebody fall in the mud in a white mink coat. There's something like weirdly satisfying about that. There's a little bit of eat the rich, but you're totally right because I think that part of what makes them the underdogs and then endearing is that the Shelley Long character, Phil's character, ends up, they joke around by their praising jewelry and like eating sushi on Rodeo Drive, but she is sort of teaching them those social skills and the connections, and she's sort of there for the girls. And the girls even complain like no other troop leader has bothered to take us to get uniforms. Like they haven't cared enough. So there's like a little bit of like, oh, these rich, privileged, overindulged kids aren't really cared for because they're not loved. And then Phyllis is there to kind of do the loving. And in a way, it did work for me as an adult because, and maybe as a parent, I kind of felt like, well, she filled that role. She was comforting the girl whose parents forgot her birthday. She was comforting the girl who couldn't afford to pay her dues because, like, her dad is a famous actor who's out of work. So there's
I need to call out, she's wearing the worst, most stereotypical Native American outfit during
oh
that
my
scene
God,
with
she
undercut.
is.
It would have been a very sweet scene, except she looks a little racist.
A little racist. It's like it's not something that would fly today, folks. We are not endorsing these types of things.
No.
These outfits. You're totally right. That outfit just was it was like noticeably not cool in the year of our Lord 2022. But there was there's a little bit, yes, you're learning the skills of like the social connection and being loved and like getting around the country club and Rodeo Drive, but there's just that basic human, just that's why they're the underdogs in a way. Like they're just learning how to be also social beings. I know I'm thinking way too deep about this, but it worked for me. That sort of montage of all those things kind of worked. And they start to work together. Like they're like, when they're selling the cookies, are really motivated. And there's a whole montage of all the ridiculously overindulged privileged things that they could do to sell the cookies, including a gala, which is ridiculous.
With Robin Leach from
Robin Leach.
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Another
Oh
cameo.
my God, the cameos in this movie when they go door knocking to sell the cookies and it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar answering the door.
I know.
Although maybe that is what it's like to sell cookies in Beverly Hills. I don't know. You don't know who's going to open
knock
that
on
door.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's door all the time. I actually thought the cookie selling scene was kind of still funny. I mean, they're basically trying to sell the cookies to outsell the Red Feathers. It's a very light plot. They have to sell enough cookies to get to the jamboree, which I couldn't even remember what the jamboree was. And then I realized it was like the wilderness test. But it all just kind of worked for me because it's everybody starting to work together as a team. I know it's cheesy. I just liked it. You did not like it, did
I
not.
can't take it away from you, but yeah, I don't have warm and fuzzy feelings towards some of the like slapstick humor and yeah, a lot of this movie, see now, oh, I'm getting honest here. A lot of this movie didn't work for me because there's no stakes decided done. And the fact that she's becoming a Girl Scout, we keep saying Girl Scouts, and I know the Girl Scouts of America did not give clearances on this movie. So the Wilderness Girls, she isn't trying to win him back by doing this. So there's like no stakes in whether she succeeds or not. And then she's going head to head with this other troop leader who is like cartoonishly villain, decent troop leader. Like that's not gonna like make or break her if she loses control of the troop. And then even like the little things that they're like, oh, these little challenges that she has to overcome, like at the end at the jamboree, the other troop, the rival troop, the red feathers are cheating a little bit and like send them into a snake swamp and like cut the rope bridge so they can't get over the crevasse. And Shelley Long's character Phyllis has to like walk over a tree, and they spend so much time like on this tree bridge, like how's she gonna cross to like get back to the rope bridge, and there's no stakes at all. Like it just, I don't know, because she's already told the girls like, we've already won, like the fact that we're together, and like that's supposed to be the moral of the movie. There's just nothing really like propelling you forward on any of this. It's just kind of watching them like be high maintenance in the woods to some degree and like chant about credit card shopping, and I don't know, like I just wasn't so charming, I guess. For I wasn't
Yeah.
feeling as charmed as you were.
Yeah, no, it's funny because it's so on the edge. It could read as dumb or it could read as charming, and like it could go either way in a weird way. I totally agree with you. The stakes are nothing. I mean, and for folks like at the jamboree at the end, the jamboree is basically a race through the wilderness in a way. It's sort of like the Amazing Race in the wilderness, and yeah, the red feathers do cheat, and of course they're like the bad guys, and Velda is trying to thwart them. And I couldn't help but be charmed by it because then even the tree thing, the tree bridge, I could feel Amanda judging me through the screen. I just feel like I need to like
Yep.
share that with our viewers or our listeners. She's super judging me. I also thought like, she's trying to cross the tree bridge with her daughter, and it was something they were going to do together. And a lot of it was about trust and da 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 da. It was
Okay,
hard.
so even like the mechanics of that. So like just to illustrate the
Yeah,
scene.
keep me honest. Keep me honest, straight.
So they got to get over this ravine, this crevasse. It didn't look that deep, honestly, but
It didn't. It didn't
um
look that dangerous.
the rope bridge has been cut because they were sabotaged, but there's luckily a giant tree has fallen across it. For the people cutting the rope bridge, did they not see the tree right next to the rope bridge? That's a
So
whole
they were
nother thing.
bad sabotagers.
They are terrible at sabotaging. So you just have to walk across the tree to go retrieve the rope bridge, throw it over. That's what we're trying to do here. Now, Phyllis's daughter, Hannah, from early on is introduced as a gymnast and has an incredible sense of balance because she does the balance beam. But Phyllis is like, no, 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 that's super dangerous, really stupid. I'm going to be the one to do it. So she's slowly, painfully making her way across. And with each little quiver, the whole troop is gasp, like
Yeah.
so dramatic, but like
Very cheesy.
really not. Like if she falls, she's gonna like maybe sprain an ankle. Like it was not a deep, hard fall here. Like so the stakes are again really low. But then her daughter decides to follow her across and gets her foot stuck, which just makes no sense at all. So then she has to go back and get her daughter. And this is what I'm calling out by spelling out this whole scene. She helps her daughter get her foot unhooked from where she's stuck and then is twisted reaching backwards, like, hold my hand, take my hand. And both of them are kind of, I mean, they're just facing backwards at that point. It was just like, that's so much more dangerous, like trying to cross this thing, holding on to someone backwards. I'm calling BS on this whole scene. Like the mechanics of it look dumb. And then Phyllis gets to the other side and they're like, oh my God. And she was like, it was awful. Like big dramatic, like, like she just fought a war. And it's like, no, tiptoed across a log. Like,
Yeah,
no.
I could see your perspective, Amanda. I can. And you know what? The jamboree like wasn't even the point. I mean,
No.
I guess I had so much fun along the way. I just sort of loved the slow starting to root for Phyllis, and I I couldn't help but be charmed by it, and I thought it was like a little bit joyful, even though like going into the jamboree, you know what's going to happen. You think they're gonna lose, shit's gonna go down, and they're gonna, and at the end they basically do lose, but then the red feathers are disqualified for various reasons because they left behind Velda, who sprained her ankle. But Troop Beverly Hills, they like somehow find a moral compass and
Although
bring Velda.
it takes them a little while to find that moral
That's
compass.
true,
They're
which I
ready to leave
appreciated.
her.
I appreciated, but they bring her, and so therefore they're the winner, and apparently in like the Girl Scout or Wilderness Girls like hierarchy, there's that old, I'm just gonna call her the old lesbian lady, was above Velda. she sort of fires Velda and then declares that True Beverly Hills won, and the big prize is actually like you just get to be on the cover of like the Wilderness Girls magazine, which is like just the it's sort of like a funny dumb prize, but it's beside the point.
I
It's
just
I
had the
was
Kardashians in my head, like for half of this movie. Like
Kardashians.
that
It
was
was two
just such a
Kardashians.
like, yes, you get to be like the center of attention in a magazine or whatever
Yeah,
calendar. I forget what that photo was for, but reward your hard work girls by taking a pretty photo of you and
I
making you
know.
minor celebrities.
Okay, so I think that the jamboree, whether it was like everyone's favorite part or not, whether it mattered, it was definitely low stakes. There were some things I still want to point out, and I can't help myself, but I don't know, Amanda, if you found yourself quoting this movie ever as a kid, because I certainly did.
I didn't,
Patches? We don't need no sticking patches. Come on.
but that comes from, I mean, that we don't need no stinking trope is in so many different movies, like the badges. We don't need no stinking badges, or like from Back to the Future. What is it? Where we're going, we don't need no stinking roads. Like
It's
that's
true. I
that's a
think,
trope where like right at the beginning, why am I blanking? Velda says like, "I love the smell of cookies in the morning," and you're just like, "Oh, come on!"
yeah, cookies or napalm. I don't know.
Like, do you think the little girls watching this at a slumber party have seen Apocalypse Now? No, they have not.
Probably not. Well, there's also another thing that I would quote in my mind, or at least like as a teenager, and I don't even think I remembered it was from this movie, is like, are you drying your nails or are you raising your hand for a question? And that's when right at the beginning, when Phyllis goes to her first meeting and she makes a ridiculous entrance in her tailored uniform, and she like yoo-hoo raises her hand, and that's how
Uh,
Velda dismisses her. And for some reason I feel like I've used that quote before a lot, not even remembering it was from this.
I wrote down some quotes as I was watching it this time, but none of them were like, I didn't remember any of them from my childhood, and I definitely didn't quote them because I didn't have that memory.
You and I
Um,
had a different response to this movie.
we
Well,
really
clearly,
did.
I mean, we've talked about this, but the cringe moment, I mean, I think, yeah, there was the Native American costume dress that was a little cringy. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call the smoking cringy, but it was close. Um,
You wouldn't put that in now.
right. I don't know if there's anything else cringy for you in this.
Some of
I'm
the
almost
kind of,
afraid to ask.
oh, here we go.
Here we
No,
go.
just some of the slapsticky moments I didn't really enjoy, like her falling in the mud in the mink coat. I know you like that a lot. And then them singing Kumbaya immediately after in the most like dramatically sad fashion. Again, no stakes set for this jamboree that all the Girl Scout troops are going off in their teams and they've got to race to the finish line and they're all terrified of this one skunk. Pay off for me. Like things like that where they barely have a build up and then there's like a slapstick joke thrown in and it just, I don't know if it was the timing or the complete lack of stakes in anything, but I just wasn't laughing at what was supposed to be these silly moments.
Yeah, I
And
mean, the skunk was predictable. As soon as Velda picked up the snake, or the skunk, if you will, and said, "You'll pay for this," and then you see her wearing it as a hat. I mean, it was
yeah.
predictable. Yeah, I guess it didn't. I do think that for kids and tweens now, the simplicity of it will honestly be a little timeless. There's a lot of movies that at least my kids like watch that are like super low stakes and stupid.
Mhm.
And clearly I was charmed by some of this and it didn't bother me as much as
I
it
mean,
bothered
we
you.
talked about this in the previous episode with Rudolph. There's no plan. They're just wandering around the Arctic, and
True. They
there's not
are.
stakes there other than they don't want to get bullied or eaten by the snow monster. But yeah, there's really no stakes in this.
No stakes.
There was an opportunity too, because Felda comes over to Phyllis's house right before the jamboree and basically makes it sound threatening, like there's a lot, you got to be careful here, and is trying to scare her out of attending. But like that would have been the perfect moment to be like, 3 years ago someone died, or just like
Like the real
something.
stake. Yeah.
Yeah, to make it seem like, like if you do this wrong, your girls are going to get hurt, or just something to make it just anything but them wandering around in the woods and running from a skunk, basically.
Yeah, I think that if you were to make this movie today, you wouldn't have been so black and white about it. And even in that moment, maybe there would be some like reconciliation between the Velda character and the Phyllis character. I mean, maybe they help each other in the end.
Or a little backstory on Velda. They do ultimately help her in the end, but she doesn't appreciate it at all. But yeah, like backstory, like she's like this because she was wearing a purple heart. Did you notice that? So
I
like
did not
she
notice
was
that.
wounded in
We have
battle
some
somewhere.
PTSD action going.
But like,
Okay.
did her, when she was serving, did she get abandoned by her fellow? I think she's supposed to be a nurse, and that's why she's wearing it. But like, was she abandoned in a battle, or was there something there? Like a little detail like that would have given so much more insight into why she's so competitive and why she's kind of crazy. Honestly, like she's taking everything to 11 for no reason.
For no reason. Yeah. I mean, I could see that for Velda. I mean, I think she was definitely the most two-dimensional to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like some of the other characters, I guess I was looking for it. I found ways to modernize the point of view to say, Phyllis just wants to be loved, and Frank just wants to spend time with his daughter, and the daughter just wants her parents to be back together and life to be normal, and all the 13-year-old girls just want attention from an adult because they're not getting it from their parents, even though they're so privileged. And then everybody can feel good about themselves because even the rich kids have problems. And I just completely inserted that narrative, and I realized, but it's funny. I watched this with Elena, with my wife, and we were both just kind of. I think at this point we're skipping to the rating, but I think we were both just kind of, we were in for the cheese, we were in for the low stakes, we were in for it. Okay. With all this in mind, I mean, I can go on and on like a lot, but I think we should stop here and we should rate. And I have a feeling we're going to be a little different on this, Amanda. So I'd love to start with you. So, just a reminder, the way, we'll each score this on 1 to 10. The scale is, 1 is garbage, 10 is Princess Bride level. What do you got for me, Amanda?
All
What are you
right.
going to rate it? So the first rating is at, does it live up to you as an adult?
You could predict this coming, but no, it doesn't. Um, I just found it really vapid. There were no stakes. I get that, like, the main character ends up being a kind of nice person
We're going to be
by
so
the
different on
end.
this.
She's so insufferable at the beginning that it was just really.
Or she's charming. I don't know.
Oh no, it starts off on a very cringe level, and like she gradually gets better, but not enough for me to say that I think this movie lives up for adults. I gotta give this a 3
A 3.
for adults. Oh yes,
Oh.
I don't ever want to watch this again.
Yeah, so this would be your lowest ranking.
It
Uh,
is
for sure.
lower than Rudolph the Red-Nosed
I
Reindeer.
mean, you gave us lower than Rudolph. That's pretty low. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna be wildly different here because I think there's this razor's edge of falls flat versus charming and cold classic, and I went to that other side. So I don't think it was at that Princess Bride great, this is a great movie level, but it was enough for me to really be charmed by it and as an adult enjoy watching it again. So I'm gonna give it a 6, and I'm
Ooh.
gonna give it a 6 because I'm aware that I gave Roger Rabbit a 7, and I thought Roger Rabbit was a better movie. But so it's definitely above average for me. It was charming, and as an adult, I found all these other things. I'm going to start talking myself into a 7 now, but I do think I did give it more
If you
credit.
go 7, it's only to accommodate the size of Craig T. Nelson's pants. Like
It's only for the
it's
10 pants.
bigger for the giant pants.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give it a 6. I think it was solidly enjoyable for me as an adult to watch it again. I found new things to like about it and appreciate about it, and I totally hear you. The stakes are stupid. There's a lot of dumb jokes, and on some of it's dated, but I can't help myself. But okay, so what do you think? I think the intended audience for this is tweens. I don't think it's really for kids. So, what do you think? Does it live up for kids or tweens?
I mean, I think
Or,
you and
and
I
what would you
saw
rate
it.
it?
Yeah, I think you and I were the target demographic when we were 10 to 12 years old. It's sleepover parties. Like, I think that's what this movie's for. I will be generous and give it a 6 for kids. I think kids
Really?
would. I mean, I gave Rudolph a 6 for kids. Not we're overly comparing to previous episodes, but there is enough silliness and that it's not scary, and there are things that we as adults are calling out as cringeworthy: the smoking, the drinking, the swearing, the Native American appropriation. But I think overall, the main character with her heart of gold, like I think that could be appealing to kids, and I think the bad guy is so cartoonish that yeah, it's very clear who's on the right side, who's on the wrong side, and then a satisfying Kmart ending for children. So I'll go 6.
Yeah, so I agree. I also wrote my notes as 6, and I thought that for all the things you said, I think the two-dimensional stuff does work still. I mean, it's not the best. Like I couldn't go above a 6. It's not something amazing for kids, but I do think there's still like it's still funny to make fun of rich people. It just is. It's fun to root for the underdog, and that's who the troop becomes. And even though there's some things that I think are kind of dated about it, even aside from the cringe moments, like obviously they're in the woods and they're reading magazines, which is like hilarious. Like every kid would be on their phone. And
1989, though, they would not.
that's right, not in 1989. So I do think there's enough there that a tween would find this fun to watch. Not their favorite movie, but I'm willing to bet if I showed this to my 10, almost 11-year-old daughter that she would enjoy it. Maybe not as much as I did watching it 1,000 times, but she'd enjoy it. All right.
All
Well,
right,
sort of.
ultimate question now. Does it live up overall?
Oh man, I went into this thinking, especially after I rewatched. I went into this thinking I have no idea whether this lives up or not. After I watched it, totally charmed by it. I was like, my criteria is would you enjoy watching this? Would you watch this again? And it was just a solid yes for me. It lives up for me. It is such a yay for me. I don't even hesitate to say that. And I thought it was really fun walk down memory lane and still lived up to me overall. So
Uh,
Amanda, what do you think?
well, you know where I'm going with this. I do not think this lives up. I think if you
Really? What gave us that impression,
if you've
Amanda?
seen Legally Blonde, you know that that's just better movie. Or even if we're making fun of like rich people and need to be sassy about it, like go watch Arrested Development. Like that's for maybe a teen. That's probably a funnier take on rich people trying to better themselves. I just found this movie annoying and despite it's trying to show someone overcoming their own, what is the word we're using for this?
Over
Overindulgedness.
overindulged.
Yeah, I just would not spend the time on this one. I would jump to Legally Blonde.
I think that's actually really fair. And I still stand by Living Up. And the rules of this podcast is that we both have to agree. So this even though I thought it did, and Amanda, you thought it didn't, so therefore it's a no overall from the Live Up podcast that this did not live up. I mean, I'm not like super disappointed. So I don't feel like, oh my God, we did this a disservice, but I'm surprised that we were so far apart on this one. And I think this is where I'd love to hear from people. So listeners, who do you agree with?
Whose side are you on here?
Whose side are you on? Do you think it
Are
lived
you
up?
with Troop Beverly Hills or are you with the Red Feathers?
Right. And Amanda, you're a red feather right now. So
you know what? I'll take that.
So for those listeners, I really do want to know, who do you agree with? Do you think this should have lived up? Do you agree with Amanda that there's no way it lives up? Let us know. So on all the socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or at Live Up Pod, you can find us there. You can also drop us a note at liveuppod@gmail.com. I really want to know what you guys think about whether this lives up, who you agree with. Are there moments we missed clearly that are charming, or maybe in Amanda's opinion, dumb?
Do we want to throw a quick plug for our next episode, which will be coming out in a date to be determined? We are going to be reviewing the Addams Family. And if anyone's watching Wednesday right now, I'm sure our conversation will veer off into that TV show a little bit, because there's a lot to compare there. But Jess, maybe that's your opportunity to really tank something I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I'm not going to purposely take it. So the Addams Family, I haven't watched it in years. So again, it's one I have no idea, but I remember loving it as a kid. And
right.
So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if you and I are on the same page or not on that one. So stay tuned, everybody.
And if you have any requests for movies from the 80s or 90s that you want us to watch, you can hit us up at that email address that Jess just mentioned a moment ago.
liveuppod@gmail or at liveuppod at any of the social accounts. And we'll take it into consideration. All right. Thanks for listening. This is the Live Up Podcast. I'm Jess Latterman.
And I'm Amanda Treat. Thank you.
We'll see you next time for the Addams Family.